snuggle up with the missus or your other half, fire up the kettle, or even put something cold and fizzy in the fridge, and let's have a night to remember. Lots to get through. My big opinion's on the way, but first the headlines with the very excellent Rory Smith.
Thank you very much, Mark. Our top story, a legal bid to challenge the decision by the Home Office to use former RAF bases to house asylum seekers has been approved by the High Court. West Lindsey District Council opposes the use of RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire. Braintree Council is challenging the use of Wethersfield Airfield in Essex. The two-day hearing began on Wednesday as the first migrants began arriving at Wethersfield. Well, former Home Secretary Priti Patel has told us here at GBNews that laws cannot be disregarded.
Braintree District Council have worked incredibly hard, and all credit to them and their legal counsel for getting us to where we are with this judicial review. It's important that local people and our local councils and statutory service bodies, that their voices are heard. We have laws in place, Nationality and Borders Act, we had the new plan for immigration in place. We worked for years to get those policies in place and that legislation in place. You can't just discard it and try to supersede it with new policies.
Almost 1,000 workers at Gatwick Airport, including baggage handlers and check-in staff, will stage 8 days of strikes later this month. Unite Union says they're because of ongoing pay disputes. Workers will walk out for 4 days. That's from Friday the 28th of July, then again from Friday the 4th of August for another 4 days. Former Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy has been found not guilty of rape and attempted rape at Chester Crown Court. The France international was accused of raping a 24-year-old woman at his house in Cheshire in October 2020. He was also charged with the attempted rape of a 29-year-old woman 2 years earlier. Mendy has always denied the charges. Hollywood actors have joined a strike by screenwriters for the first time in 60 years. As well as pay rise, actors want guarantees that AI versions of their likeness won't be used to replace them without permission or payment. Some film premieres here in the UK will go ahead, but without talent until the dispute is resolved. World number one Carlos Alcaraz will face Novak Djokovic in the Wimbledon men's singles final. Well, earlier Djokovic beat Jannik Sinner 6-3, 6-4, 7-6. His record, equalling 46th Grand Slam semi-final, earns him a record-breaking 35th final, taking him past that of Chris Evert. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now though, back to Mark.
Thanks, Rory. See you at 10. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Happy Friday, one and all. In my big opinion, a top makeup brand uses bearded men in an advert for their female cosmetic products. The cancellation of women continues apace. In the big story, as men's mental health dominates the headlines, including Dele Alli and Hugh Edwards, we speak to a man who came back from the brink himself and now campaigns to help other people who are suffering. My Mark Meets guest is the maverick businessman John Mappin, who turned down £1 million from the government to house migrants in his Cornish Castle hotel. In my take at 10, the media elite circling the wagons to defend Hugh Edwards will be sorely disappointed. Shocking allegations remain. This story is going nowhere, not on my watch. In tonight's Newsmaker, my Newsmaker tonight is ex-BBC Crime Watch and Children in Need presenter Sue Cook, who gives her exclusive take on the Hugh Edwards scandal. Will he ever appear on TV again? I'll be asking Sue in the next hour. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30, with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, author and campaigner for Children in Care, Chris Wilde, GB News presenter and financial analyst, Albie Amankona, and journalist and broadcaster, queen of the big scoop, Linda Jubilee. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, should non-British citizens who come from overseas pay more for the NHS? As they face a Supreme Court battle, are the government right to double down on their Rwanda plan? And as Snow White's 7 dwarves head for the job centre, have woke Disney finally lost the plot? Plus your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.com. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Lots to get through. We'll start with my big opinion. The woke mind virus strikes again. Makeup giant Maybelline have suffered a huge backlash from furious women after their female cosmetic products were advertised by a bunch of men with beards. Take a look.
Prime Day on Amazon, so why not see if Maybelline has any deals going on? And look at that! Super Stay Vinyl Ink is 30% off, and my favorite colors are in stock and ready to ship. My Amazon order arrived the next day, and here I am, filming a makeup review. And baby, check out this color and shine.
Ooh, ladies, you're so glamorous. Is nothing sacred now? Is it too much to ask for women to advertise women's cosmetic products, do you think? This after the biologically male trans influencer Dylan Mulvaney angered women with a Nike advert for a female sports bra. These woke corporations are trolling women on an Olympic level. Dylan Mulvaney, who can identify however they like, good luck to them, it's a free world, has previously provoked anger for videos mocking things like women's periods. Take a listen to this.
Day 31 of being a girl, and I'm freaking out a little bit. I haven't gotten my period yet, okay? I'm late. And, I mean, I haven't kissed anyone in a while, but still, like, we know what happened to the Virgin Mary, okay? It's possible. In all seriousness, no, I can't get a period. But my doctor did tell me that the estrogen I'm taking can cause me to become, like, kind of hormonal, emotional, like 3 to 4 days out of the month. So watch out.
Yeah, she can take a hot flush. There's another video from Dylan Mulvaney in which he, I don't know, not sure what the words are now, messes around with a tampon. How hilarious women's periods are. What a jolly jape. This is an egregious insult to real women who use such products or have writhed in bed in pain during their time of the month. But for this biological male in a dress, it's a bit of a laugh. We've seen biological males smashing women athletes in professional sport with the clear advantage of a masculine physiology and male puberty on their side. Apparently, that's progress. We've gone back decades in terms of fighting for women's hard-earned sex-based rights, with dangerous and dystopian unisex toilets and changing rooms. And surely a low point was the accommodation of a double rapist, Isla Bryson, fully intact, in a female prison. I still can't believe I'm saying that sentence. What a time to be alive. It doesn't end there. Just last weekend at a trans pride march, another biological male, identifying as female, had this charming message to their followers.
I was going to come here and be really fluffy and be really nice and say, yeah, be really lovely and queer and gay. No, if you see a turf, punch him in the face.
Sarah Jane Baker there, such a naughty girl. Violence is always justified if you have right on your side, apparently. The tyranny of woke progressives knows no bounds and goes unchecked by a corporate, media and political elite in the grip of this bonkers ideology which says you can change your biological sex. I don't remember any prominent public figures, companies or politicians calling out this vile video. Women are misrepresented and lied about every day, with pathetic news reports like ex-soldier exposed her penis and used a wheelie bin as a sex toy in public. Look out for more of these stories about women that beat people up, women that rape people, women that murder. I think you'll find on closer examination they are intact biological males. But that's how meaningless and devalued the word woman has become. Frankly, I think the whole of womankind could sue for slander on their name every time a so-called woman has committed a crime, because it's not true. Meanwhile, a woke charity rebrands the female reproductive anatomy as a bonus hole. Could there be a more offensive use of language about a woman? Speaking of language, women aren't even allowed to call themselves women anymore. No, if you're a person with a cervix or a menstruating human, the best you can hope for is cis woman, a dystopian term which reflects the dark, cruel horror of this ideology. When did society decide it was okay to insult women? When did society decide it was okay to attack women? When did society decide it was okay to belittle, mock, and erase women, to diminish their rights and freedoms, to challenge their identity and take away spaces where they can be safe and where they can be, you know, women? Don't forget, this is half of the adult population being gaslit, being insulted, being erased. Bearded blokes selling female cosmetic products is a new low. You couldn't make it up, but it's a close shave for those woke corporations. I'll be honest with you, I only need to shave about once every 2 years. Still waiting for puberty to kick in. Your reaction, Mark at GBNews.com. Companies like Maybelline would argue that they've got a growing audience for their products now, men and women, people that identify in different ways. All they're trying to do is include all customers. They would argue that the world is changing and people identifying by different genders, they want to embrace that. So, you know, also there's the argument that trans people are some of the most attacked and vilified in our society and they need some love. So it's all about opinions. What's yours? Do let me know. Let's get reaction now from my fantastic pundits tonight. Marky, do you mind scrolling me along while we get to the fantastic details here? First of all, author and campaigner for Children in Care, Chris Wilde. GB News star, Albiam Ancona, and journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. And Linda, I am duty-bound to ask you first because you're a cis woman.
Am I? Do you know what this reminds me of, though? It's a real-life example of the new Kim Cattrall programme on Netflix called Glamorous, where she, as a makeup mogul, hires a trans man to promote her makeup line. And I think it's a brilliant, hilariously funny show that actually made several really good points. You know, and just like that, the sequel to Sex and the City was a terrible flop. But Glamorous has actually taken the bull by the horns, so to speak, and has been very, very successful. So I've got a problem with Maybelline doing this at all.
OK, I mean, do you think
problem.
in some ways with my complaints about this changing world and how women are characterised differently, am I just a dinosaur?
No, but in my view, you're sweating the small stuff. OK? I don't mean to be insulting, but I don't...
Insult away.
But I don't
Makes for great telly.
I don't mind. Look, there was a party round at my ex's house last weekend and there was a trans woman there and I was really, you know, happy to meet her, who had been him or whatever, and there's another one who's now a him who had been a her. I don't care as long as they're kind, decent people.
All right. Well, Albie, I imagine that you'll agree with Linda.
I just think there's something quite hypocritical about a man with a face full of makeup criticising an advert advertising makeup at men. I mean, how do we know that this advert was directed at women? If I looked at that advert, I would think that was an advert for makeup and the people in the advert are men, and they're saying, well, men can wear makeup too. We're both sat here with a face full of makeup on. I might find some new makeup on that. And maybe I'll go to Maybelline.
Well, I'm wearing an inch of makeup, and I'll be honest, I'm unwatchable without it. But this is off the back of Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney and, of course, Nike sports bras being marketed by a biological male.
I think that's different. I think it's a bit of a leap to go from this Maybelline advert, which is just men advertising makeup to whoever wants to buy it.
Putting on women's makeup, lipstick, colour, all the rest of it.
I think it's a bit of a leap from that to erasing women from society. I think you've got some very good points on that half of the argument. I'm just not sure what the link is with the Maybelline advert.
Well, I think this is death by a thousand cuts, because many people, especially women watching that, would argue that what those bearded men are doing is something called woman face, in which they're basically sort of mocking or parading or caricaturing women in a way that's deeply offensive.
Yeah, and you know, I want to come at this at a different angle. I'm raising a 10-year-old girl. And I have to step gingerly around her like walking on eggshells when I see stuff like this. And I refuse to be wokeified. I will speak the truth and I'll say, actually...
Because you're politically on the left, but you're not woke.
I'm not politically on the left and I'm not woke. But in this scenario, it's difficult because, you know, I have to raise a 10-year-old girl and how do I bring her into a world, how do I adjust to her world where that's deemed as unsuitable, it's deemed as offensive, and that's what I find. I do find it slightly offensive. I do in a way that, you know, women are women, and we've gone too far, and it's got to the point where you can't even talk to a 10-year-old girl about what's right and wrong in those commercials.
OK, last word to Linda.
Historically, of course, men always wore as much makeup as women. It's only in recent years that men wore no makeup. You go back even 150 years, 200 years, you'll find men wearing just as much makeup as women.
Your reaction to a cosmetic ad with bearded men. Albie thinks it's gorgeous. I've got to say, some of the lads look, you know, I mean, certainly if I'd had a couple of drinks, never say never. But listen, what do you think about that advert? If you're one of my brilliant female viewers or listeners, let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.com. Coming up next in the big story, as men's mental health dominates the headlines this week, particularly in regards to Hugh Edwards and the footballer Dele Alli, we speak to a man who came back from the brink and survived suicide. He's got an incredible, sensational story, very inspiring. He's next.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Needed to be done, haven't been done.
OK, Patricia has responded to my big opinion. This is Maybelline, an advert with bearded men selling all sorts of fancy makeup, you know, lipstick and blusher and essentially female cosmetics. Patricia says, Mark, you won't be able to print what I think about that makeup advert. Steve says, Mark, men used to wear makeup 150 years ago. I take issue with that. The only ones that wore makeup at that time were the hoi polloi, not the ordinary man in the street. It has gone too far and has become ridiculous and obscene. Muriel, women are being sacrificed to the whole trans thing. It's severe misogyny, and we need to stand up and fight. We are close to losing. Muriel, thank you for that. Keep those emails coming. Mark at gbnews.com. And it's time now for the big story. And with BBC presenter Hugh Edwards receiving treatment for serious mental health issues, and ex-Spurs and England footballer Dele Alli revealing the shocking abuse he suffered as a youngster, men's mental health is currently very high on the agenda. My next guest is an army veteran who has experienced a breakdown and has survived suicide after being diagnosed with degenerative disease disorder of the spine and post-traumatic stress disorder. Nick, great to have you on the show.
Hi, Mark. How are we doing?
I'm very well. I'm delighted you've joined us. We know about the tragedy and the horrors of suicide, but surviving suicide brings its own challenges.
Yeah, that's right. It's something that I found rarely gets spoken about. And, you know, when we have an estimated 200,000 people attempting suicide every year, with 12% of those who survive an attempt going on to die by suicide within the 2 years following their attempt, there's a big problem with this, you know, and I just feel it's not really being addressed.
Indeed. What are the issues around suicide survival? Why is it so hard? What do you face every day having avoided dying?
So initially, there can be a lot of shame, fear, guilt. You know, that some people do get a sense like a wake-up call, you know, and then they're ever so thankful they survived and they managed to turn themselves around. But generally, you can experience shame that you tried it and that you did such a thing. And then you are scared of how other people are going to react. You know, it isn't just your family and friends, it's also your work colleagues. And there is still a huge stigma around suicide, around mental health even. And whilst we are starting to hear more from bereaved families and they're getting an opportunity to share their story, we're not hearing from survivors. So they don't see that there is hope. You know, they don't see that other people are managing to find a way through, and trying to get support as well. So, for example, I'm in a situation now whereby I have suicidal ideation. So I have suicidal thoughts now. And when I'm in crisis, yes, I can ring up and get some support from crisis cafes or from the Samaritans and learning supports, they're called, listening supports. But there's nothing in between, you know. So there's nothing I can get right now. There's no peer support groups. I might get one-to-one counselling if I'm lucky. And as we know, waiting lists. I heard from a friend of mine who's been told that it'd be 9 months before they can get any support for their suicidal ideation. And so there's nothing kind of there for people to be able to go through it and to work through it. It can be a very confusing time.
Indeed. So, listen, can we reflect on the situation of Hugh Edwards at the moment? And we understand that he has battled depression for many years and he's now receiving treatment. I understand he's not a well bunny. He faces potentially the end of his career and huge problems for his family. What do you think he's going through tonight?
I mean, we can never know. We can never put ourselves in someone else's shoes. You know, two identical people could have depression and yet have completely different symptoms from one another. I think he will be fearful. There's a lot of, within suicidal ideation and mental ill health, there's a lot of emotions there. And the emotions can be overwhelming. They can be very confusing. They can cause you to make rash decisions, bad choices. And when you look at the biggest causes of triggering suicide, especially in men, it's around work and career, finance, and relationships.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the biggest one right there. It's going to be a very, very scary time, a very lonely time, I would surmise right now.
Well, Nick, thank goodness you survived your suicide attempt. You're now a very successful public speaker who, despite your significant disabilities, have raised thousands of pounds by completing a string of incredible challenges. Let's not forget, you have served with distinction in the armed forces for many, many years as well. You're a brave guy, you're heroic. You're a bit of a handsome devil as well. So listen, very TV friendly, let me tell you. You're quite speedy on four wheels as well. Let's take a look at this. Successfully overtaking a Formula One motor car. Look at that. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah. What was happening there?
I cannot tell you.
Tell me about that. That was brilliant. I love that. Tell me about that. What a moment.
So that was there was a suicide prevention initiative called the Baton of Hope UK, and they visited 12 cities in 12 days around the UK. It was flipping amazing. It was unifying bereaved families and people who've been impacted by suicide and survivors. It was, talk about needing hope, wanting hope. That was hope all over. And it came to Milton Keynes. They were one of the cities. And Red Bull Racing very generously said that we can hand over the baton, which you can see Daniel Ricciardo is the driver there, and he's holding that amazing baton that was made by the Royal Jewellers. And I was following on behind. There was a lot of, obviously, health and safety and stuff, being told where to be. And then the crowd, you can't really hear them there, the crowd was starting to go on, do it. And Mike McCarthy, who's one of the co-founders of the Baton of Hope and lost his son, sadly, to suicide. And I said something to him like, I can take him on the straight, Mike. I'm not great on corners, but I can take him on the straight. He said, go for it. And I thought, sod it. So I just put it down and that happened. And it was amazing.
Lewis Hamilton, eat your heart out. Nick, I'm so grateful you've joined us tonight. I'm well aware that you battle mental health issues as well as huge physical challenges as well, but your spirit is indomitable. You are a Hercules. Let me tell you that you can find out more about what Nick does. His brilliant website, disabledadventurer.com, all one word, disabledadventurer.com. Check out his brilliant work. He's on Twitter as well, well worth a follow. Nick, we'll catch up soon. Thank you for telling us your story. If you need support or need to reach out, do visit samaritans.org or call them on 116 123. That's 116 123, or speak to your GP. Help is always out there. Brilliant stuff. Now, coming up next with the pundits, should non-British citizens who come from overseas pay more for the NHS? As they face a Supreme Court battle, are the government right to double down on their Rwanda plan? And as Snow White's 7 dwarves have basically lost their jobs. Have woke Disney finally lost the plot? And don't forget, at 10 o'clock, my first comments on Hugh Edwards of the show. That's right, I'm keeping my powder dry on that story, but I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards at 10. But it's the pundits next. See you in 2.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite an unsettled, wet and miserable end to the week, and that isn't going to change much as we go through the weekend. It's all due to this area of low pressure that's going to be pushing northeastwards across the UK, and it's going to be bringing some pretty strong winds even as we go into tonight. But that rain that we've seen through much of Friday will start to clear away towards northern Scotland, but bringing some heavier bursts for eastern areas, so there could be some localised disruption there. Elsewhere, a drier night, maybe the odd shower, but with those strong winds, temperatures still remaining in the low teens. Now looking to the start of the weekend, and that rain will start to clear away from northern Scotland. A rash of showers developing across the rest of the UK. These could be heavy and thundery, and with some particularly strong winds as well. They'll be rattling from west to east throughout the day, though we might just see the odd more slow-moving shower across parts of Scotland. But in those strong winds, it's going to continue to be feeling unseasonably cool through Saturday. Looking ahead to Sunday, though, generally the better day of the weekend for many. There will be some persistent rain for a time across western parts of Scotland and the odd shower elsewhere, but a bit more in the way of sunshine and winds starting to ease as we go south to north. But looking ahead into the new week, and it will still remain unsettled, not so much as we've seen over the weekend, with temperatures at or below average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The North London champagne-swilling media elite think the Hugh Edwards story is over. Not on my watch. I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards at 10 o'clock in my take at 10. That's just 25 minutes from now. You won't want to miss it. Lots of emails coming in. We've just spoken to suicide survivor and military veteran, the amazing Nick Wilson. And Tarani says, hi, thank you for your service, Nick Wilson. I send you lots of love and healing. You're fabulous. Half of fighting anything is in the mind. So keep feeding your mind some interesting thoughts. Keep shining bright. Tarani, thank you for that. Maybelline, the makeup company, have caused a bit of a storm with an advert featuring bearded men wearing women's makeup, and lipstick and blushes and all of that. Plenty of people have argued that that's fine, because if they want to wear makeup, why not? But Joe is not happy. Joe says, Mark, in itself, the advert is small and irrelevant, but as part of the hatred and erasure of womanhood and manhood too, it's pretty scary. John says, I'll get to John in just in a moment, it's a different topic. Rhonda says, Mark, what's going on? I'll tell you, since the monster woke raised its ugly head, anything and everything goes. I'm so glad to have gotten through my youth without being subjected to all of this. I'm a biological woman. Remember them? Or will we too become a thing of the past? Scary times ahead, says Rhonda. How about Vicky? She says regarding Maybelline and bearded men selling makeup, it's the point behind this whole issue that interests me, says Vicky. The huge majority are being cajoled and forced into accepting the ideology of less than 1%. That is the point. And last but not least, Helen says, hi, Mark. I'm dismayed by two of your panellists in particular because it is death by 1,000 cuts. And it's getting worse by the day. Being insulted, demeaned and erased as a woman is not where I hoped and thought women would be in 2023, but here we are. The Maybelline ad is repugnant. That's from Helen, who has finished the email with a little kiss. So, Helen, I hope it's not inappropriate if I just...
Which panellist?
Yeah, which panellist?
If I return it. There we are. Well, listen, that's why we love our pundits, is because it's all about opinions on this show. Mark Dolan tonight and GB News are the home of free speech. Whatever you think, you just get it out there, folks. No one's vilified, no one's cancelled. So, reacting to the big stories of the day, author and campaigner for Children in Care, Chris Wilde, GB News star, Albie Amancona, and journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. Albie, it also says you're a financial analyst, but as far as I'm concerned, you're a TV star now. I feel you've moved on from that.
Maybe. I'm not sure what my finance was.
The only issue is get used to being broke. It's a very, as Linda will tell you, it's a tricky profession. OK, listen, let's start with this. And the government are planning to charge non-Brits who temporarily move to the UK an extra £400 a year towards health services. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says the extra fees for non-Brits will help cover the cost of pay rises for 1 million public sector workers. This announced pay rise will be between 5% and 7% for teachers, junior doctors and other public workers. But what do we think? Should non-Brits, people from overseas, pay more for the NHS? Albie?
Well, it seems like a pretty clever way to raise some extra money in quite a politically popular and savvy way, because you can raise money. This is basically a tax rise, but it's a tax rise on immigrants. So it's a tax rise which is popular with the British public because the going mentality at the moment is that we're against immigration. But, of course, what's interesting about this story is that it actually shows how much our public services rely on immigration, because this pay rise is being funded by the money of immigrants that apparently we don't want. So
what did you think about the comments of William Hague, who said that actually even right-wingers need to accept that Britain needs migrants? Do you think that the conversation around migration is changing? Because many of my viewers and listeners feel that the country is full.
The conversation around migration has changed. If you remember, in the 2010s, it was the Conservative Party policy to have immigrations in the tens of thousands. That is not happening anymore. I think they want to get immigration back down to around 250,000. So this is in the hundreds of thousands. So the conversation around migration has changed. And I think William does make an interesting point. But you will also hear people like Miriam Cates saying, we need to be having more children. They're actually both saying the same thing. The country needs more people. One politician is saying we should get it from immigration. Another one saying that we should get it from having our own children.
Well, listen, talking about migration, the government are going back to the Supreme Court. They're doubling down on the Rwanda plan. Chris Wilde, your reaction?
Yeah, well, you know, it's personal to me because I work with a lot of young refugees and migrants who come into the care sector. And what annoys me about this, right, when they come to England, they're not met with luxuries. They're not met with a bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates. They come into our care sector. They're treated like second-class citizens, Mark. And this ideology to send them to Rwanda, we might as well bring in back the guillotine as well while we're at it. And the only way I can comprehend this is to think about when that decision was made, all the Tories were intoxicated in one of their private parties, because for me, it's just a farcical idea, and it's just the Tories' way of whistleblowing and just coming up with these ideas to prevent refugees coming into this country. But that's not the solution. How is that a solution?
But the Australian Labour Party support the Australian Stop the Boats policy, which is what the British Stop the Boats policy is based upon. It's worked very well, so well, that the Australian Labour Party support the Liberal Party, which is the Australian Conservative Party's policy.
But I don't even know
Linda?
whether it's a party political issue. I think this is an issue of humanity, if you like.
Thank you, humanity.
So the fact of the matter is that I've never agreed, even though I'm a kind of small C Conservative, I've never agreed with the Rwanda policy. I've thought from day one it's inhuman.
It's inhumane.
And any amount of footage showing Suella Braverman looking around these apartments in Rwanda and discussing soft furnishings is not going to convince me that it's a great idea. But what I do understand, because I've been supporting the Afghans who were airlifted off the tarmac at Kabul 2 years ago, and I've been inside at least bridging hotels, not necessarily asylum-seeking hotels, what I understand is there is no room. So something else has to happen. It might be barges off the coast of...
Rwanda is meant as a disincentive, isn't it? And I don't think the idea is that hundreds of thousands of people will go to Rwanda. The idea is that it kills the business model of criminal gangs.
Well, I think we should be thinking about destroying the boats. You know, actually go to France,
You need separate
destroy the boats.
Mark, I've got 18-year-old boys who are that scared they're going to get sent into Rwanda. They're going into hiding, they're running away, and some of them are even contemplating suicide. They're that scared.
But, Chris, and I appreciate that humanitarian crisis, you're so right.
Yeah.
But £7 million a day to accommodate illegal migrants into the country, that's £3 billion a year, which is the entire levelling up fund for the north of England.
I get that, Mark. I get that, but we've got to find a decent solution, one which is humane.
But we have, I mean, not to labour the point, but we do have legal net migration of over 600,000, which is actually over 1 million if you don't subtract the people that leave. How sustainable are these numbers?
Yeah, then I get it.
I think we've got to separate legal migration and illegal migration, because, of course, legal migration, we're inviting those people here. They're students, they're Ukrainian refugees, they're people from Hong Kong. Yeah. The illegal migration problem is a separate beast which needs to be tackled. I support the Rwanda policy. We need a strong deterrent, and the point of a deterrent is it's not meant to be a nice thing.
But it's not a safe country. Maybe it is a deterrent, but it's not a safe country.
You would send an 18-year-old boy to Rwanda, where the potential is he might get killed, he might end up being groomed into some gangs out there, forced into slavery, and you support that?
I support a strong deterrent to deter people from crossing the channel.
That's a Tory thing.
Yeah. Well, it's not just a Tory thing. You actually find that there are a lot of people who support the Rwanda policy, and it's not one of the Chief Justices that made the decision about the ruling this week about it being illegal actually believes that Rwanda was a safe country. This isn't something...
Yeah, but two didn't.
Well, yes, I know. but the point is, I agree with that judge. Are you also saying that he's an evil Tory too?
Well, he's an evil Tory.
I'm quite torn. I think you've all made really good points. I think Chris's point about the humanitarian aspect is key. But then Albie speaks for many millions of people who want this issue of illegal migration solved. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.com. I'll let you have the casting vote. Coming up next, my Mark Meets guest is the maverick businessman John Mappin, who turned down £1 million from the government to house migrants in his Cornish Castle hotel. He's also a good friend of Donald Trump. What is the orange one up to? Will he return to the White House? I'll be asking his close pals shortly. And don't forget, in just 15 minutes' time, Hugh Edwards and his media pals think that story is over. Well, not on my watch. I'll be dealing with the BBC star at 10 o'clock in my Take at 10. You won't want to miss it. Mark Meets is next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This Monday, Dan Wootton is back. Don't miss big opinions and fiery debate.
That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At 10 o'clock in my Take at 10, I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards, who thinks this story is going away. Not on my watch. But first, Mark meets. And tonight, the maverick businessman and newspaper publisher John Mappin, who made headlines when he refused to accept £1 million from the government to house migrants in his stunning Cornish castle, the Camelot Castle Hotel. He's also a friend of Donald Trump, having won over 100 grand predicting Trump's victory in 2016. He started his career selling silver balloons outside Harrods and now boasts a media and hospitality empire. The drinks are on him. John, welcome to the show.
Well, very good to see you, Mark.
Thrilled to have you in with us. Good luck with that wobbly stool, by the way. £1 million to accommodate migrants. Why did you say no? That's a lot of money.
Well, it was actually more than $1 million. I don't know where that figure came from, but what it would do to the local community. And initially I thought it was a joke, and I have to credit GB News and Nigel for picking the story up, because it went completely viral after you did your segment on it. And we got email after email after email from people who were staggered. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It even ended up going viral in America. It went on to Tucker Carlson, and that was extraordinary.
And this is a high-end, five-star style hotel?
Yeah, well, you see, what they wanted me to do was fire all the staff, and or a goodly number of them. I think we'd have left with about 3. And then I said, well, what if the breakages in the hotel? Because it's a fairly pleasant hotel. And
ornate.
It's quite ornate. And they said, oh, don't worry, we'll pay for the costs of that. And that I just couldn't believe. But I also said to them, well, what are you going to do to the local community? What's going to happen to these people? Is the government doing anything about that? And they said, no, nothing at all. And then, of course, you guys picked it up and it went viral. And I thought, when the government actually said that they were going to change their policy. And, you know, because actually you guys raised so much noise about it. Here's what you're not going to believe, Mark. 3 weeks ago, I had another letter.
Another offer?
Another offer. And they'd come up with another solution, but now they've gone back to the luxury hotel solution. And this time, I called the company, which was a different company, and I made copious notes and documentation of the telephone call. And it is just outrageous. They wanted to do it again. And of course, we've seen what's happened in Wales, in Llanelli, yeah. Unbelievable.
Absolutely shocking, desperate for communities. And you would have made money, so you've turned down a good income in order to preserve the status of the hotel as just that.
Well, I think you have to look at what it does to the local community.
Yeah.
And it would have devastated. I mean, we are the main employer in town, and our staff have been with us for decades.
And it's a popular local hub. People go and have dinner there, they have drinks there, and they stay there.
Of
and
course
they have weddings and all the rest of it.
Oh, all sorts of things, yeah. Well, it is the hub of the village.
Bar mitzvahs, all the rest of it.
All that, you know. Absolutely.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. You made over 100 grand predicting that he would become president. What's your appraisal of his time in the White House?
You know, I think he did a good job under the circumstances. I think he came into an assault from day one, really. I think the economy boomed, and that, of course, is really the measure of any presidency or leadership. I think he did a great job, and I think it's a good chance he'll be in again.
No wars either,
no.
Unlike now under Joe Biden and Ukraine, with the Americans sending cluster bombs to Ukraine, which the Brits say is the wrong thing to do. You've written a letter to Rishi Sunak. What have you called for?
Well, just to get together, because it is completely endable. I had a meeting a few days ago at the Russian embassy with the ambassador and with actually the military attaché. And there is no question at all that this whole thing can be put to bed in less than 24 hours.
Do the Americans want this war to end?
Well, I don't think they do, and I think that's the problem. But I think we as Britain, with our tradition of diplomacy and supposed intelligence, we should really not be playing into the Americans' game. We've tended to do this in the past few years. But what we have to remember is that every day you and I are sitting here and we're putting our children to bed. And we have, this is brother killing brother. The bloodshed has got to come to an end.
And Donald Trump has said he would end that war in days. Do you believe him?
I know it's solvable in hours.
What do you think the solution looks like? Do the Russians get Crimea? Do they get a guarantee that Ukraine doesn't join NATO?
I think the first thing is we need to be honest about the actual reasons that it started. And that has to be part of any negotiation. What we're being fed at the moment in the West is really false information about the origins of the war and why it started. And for any argument to resolve, whether it's a domestic or whether it's something more serious, such as an argument that could result in nuclear war, you have to be honest about the origins. So that requires communication. It does not require cluster bombs. It does not require depleted uranium. What it requires is getting Rishi Sunak, Putin, into a room, and for him to, Rishi and I went to the same school. So I know he's bright enough to sort this out, and I believe in him. And what my letter, which you can read on Twitter, we lay that out quite clearly.
Well, look, I hope you prevail, because it's important to look at any solution to this awful conflict in which thousands of people have lost their lives. I'm no Russian sympathiser, let me tell you. Putin is something of a monster, potentially a war criminal, but you've got to get those people around the table and you've got to end this war. More power to you, John. Brilliant to have you on the show. We'll catch up soon. And let me tell you, the Camelot Castle Hotel is open for business in the most beautiful part of the country, so check it out. Highly recommended. Next up, in my Take a 10, I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards, who thinks this story has gone away. Not on my watch. We'll be doing journalism in about 3 minutes' time. It won't be pretty for everyone. See you shortly.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite an unsettled, wet and miserable end to the week, and that isn't going to change much as we go through the weekend. It's all due to this area of low pressure that's going to be pushing northeastwards across the UK, and it's going to be bringing some pretty strong winds even as we go into tonight. But that rain that we've seen through much of Friday will start to clear away towards northern Scotland, but bringing some heavier bursts for eastern areas, so there could be some localised disruption there. Elsewhere, a drier night, maybe the odd shower, but with those strong winds, temperatures still remaining in the low teens. Now looking to the start of the weekend, and that rain will start to clear away from northern Scotland. A rash of showers developing across the rest of the UK. These could be heavy and thundery, and with some particularly strong winds as well. They'll be rattling from west to east throughout the day, though we might just see the odd more slow-moving shower across parts of Scotland. But in those strong winds, it's going to continue to be feeling unseasonably cool through Saturday. Looking ahead to Sunday, though, generally the better day of the weekend for many. There will be some persistent rain for a time across western parts of Scotland and the odd shower elsewhere, but a bit more in the way of sunshine and winds starting to ease as we go south to north. But looking ahead into the new week, and it will still remain unsettled, not so much as we've seen over the weekend, with temperatures at or below average.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, the media elite circling the wagons to defend Hugh Edwards will be sorely disappointed. Shocking allegations remain. This story is going nowhere. Not on my watch. My newsmaker tonight is ex-BBC Crime Watch and Children in Need presenter Sue Cook, who gives her exclusive take on the Hugh Edwards scandal. And Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from exactly 10:30 sharp. And we've got that Friday feeling. The weekend starts here. The weather was terrible today, wasn't it? But I think there's going to be a bit of sunshine across the country tomorrow. Either way, hopefully most of you are off work and getting a well-deserved break. But whatever you're up to, keep it GB News and keep it Mark Dolan tonight. I'll be dealing with Hugh Edwards after the headlines with a real newsreader, Rory Smith.
What a flirt. Thank you, Mark. A legal bid to challenge the decision by the Home Office to use former RAF bases to house asylum seekers has been approved by the High Court. West Lindsey District Council opposes the use of RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire. Braintree Council is challenging the use of Wethersfield Airfield in Essex. The two-day hearing began on Wednesday as the first migrants began arriving at Wethersfield. Well, former Home Secretary Priti Patel has told us here at GB News that laws cannot be disregarded.
Braintree District Council have worked incredibly hard, and all credit to them and their legal counsel for getting us to where we are with this judicial review. It's important that local people and our local councils and statutory service bodies, that their voices are heard. We have laws in place, Nationality and Borders Act, we have the new plan for immigration in place. We worked for years to get those policies in place and that legislation in place. You can't just discard it and try to supersede it with new policies.
Police say no criminal offences were committed in relation to the deaths of two people off Bournemouth Beach in May. 17-year-old Joe Abbas and 12-year-old Suna Khan died after being suspected to have been caught in a riptide next to the pier on May the 31st. A man in his 40s who was initially arrested on suspicion of manslaughter will face no further action. Former Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy has been found not guilty of rape and attempted rape at Chester Crown Court. The France international was accused of raping a 24-year-old woman at his house in Cheshire in October 2020. He was also charged with the attempted rape of a 29-year-old woman 2 years earlier. Mendy has always denied the charges. Almost 1,000 workers at Gatwick Airport, including baggage handlers and check-in staff, will stage 8 days of strikes later this month. Unite Union says they're because of ongoing pay disputes. Workers will walk out for 4 days. That's from Friday the 28th of July, then again from Friday the 4th of August for another 4 days. Hollywood actors have joined a strike by screenwriters for the first time in 60 years. As well as a pay rise, actors want guarantees that AI versions of their likeness won't be used to replace them without permission or without payment. Some film premieres here in the UK will go ahead, but without the talent until the dispute is resolved. In sport, world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz will face Novak Djokovic in the Wimbledon men's singles final. Well, earlier, Djokovic beat Jannik Sinner 6-3, 6-4, 7-6. That earns him a record-breaking 35th final, taking him past that of Chris Evert. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now, though, back to Mark.
Thanks, Rory. See you in an hour. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Happy Friday, one and all. The weekend starts here. In the Newsmaker, my Newsmaker guest tonight is ex-BBC Crime Watch and Children in Need presenter Sue Cook, who gives her exclusive take on the Hugh Edwards scandal. Will he ever be back on TV? I'll be asking Sue very shortly. Plus, tomorrow's front page is hot off the press at 10:30 sharp. And my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. Strap yourselves in, folks. Here's my take at 10. I hate to break it to you, but as the usual suspects in the media elite circle the wagons to protect one of their own, this Hugh Edwards story is not going anywhere. Let me start by saying it's a cause of deep concern that this father of 5 is unwell, and we wish him a speedy recovery. he and his family must be going through hell. And it's fantastic that he'll have the chance to address the allegations made against him. After all, the police have found no evidence of illegality. So if he hasn't broken the law, why can't we all move on, as his lovey North London pals so wish that we would? Well, take a listen to this highly respected journalist at the Times newspaper, Sean O'Neill, who tweeted the following yesterday. My tuppence worth on The Sun, the BBC and the presenter. There seems to be a suggestion in the air that journalists should only report on criminality. When I broke the Oxfam story in 2018, he writes, it was not about criminality, but serious misconduct, abuse of power and breach of trust. The abuse of power, a feature of the allegations against Edwards, may not see you go to prison, but are completely unacceptable in any workplace for any employee, particularly a high-profile individual like Edwards, the face of the state broadcaster's news operation, where trust is a premium and whose wages are paid for by the taxpayer. Are BBC employees held to a higher standard? Yes, they are. Do we have more of a right to know what they get up to, particularly if it's misconduct? Yes, we do. Don't forget, former Justice Secretary Dominic Raab was hounded out of a job because of allegations he wasn't a very nice boss. Not illegal, but like the cars in a Vin Diesel movie, he was gone in 60 seconds. I don't remember these woke lovies, the well-heeled North London-dwelling media establishment, screaming that he hadn't broken any laws. They didn't say anything. Many think the Hugh Edwards story is winding down and that those pursuing these allegations are running out of road. Well, far from it. Whilst the Sun newspaper, who have inexplicably decided to call a ceasefire on reporting what is by definition a story in the national interest, this guy fronted the King's coronation and the Queen's funeral, no less. Brave journalists at the Beeb itself, it's been reported in today's Express, now have dozens of BBC journalists working on more potential Hugh Edwards stories. A slew of fresh claims, we're told, have since been made about the presenter, including 2 from a former and current employee of the BBC, interviewed by Newsnight. According to the news website Deadline, multiple sources have been contacted by Victoria Derbyshire, the brilliant host of that show, as Newsnight looked into rumours of alleged unwanted messages to junior staff. Many asked why complaints weren't made at the time. Well, it's Me Too all over again. The dynamic of these allegations is the same. Powerful male star, untouchable, presiding over a culture of fear in which to speak out risks career and/or reputational consequences. Now, there's no evidence that Hugh Edwards is guilty of that, but the allegations have that flavour about them. Why did nobody at ITV speak out about Philip Schofield? Well, perhaps they feared for their job. You see, that's what unchecked power does. It gives people the ability to behave in a certain way with impunity. What this whole story has demonstrated to me is the importance of the BBC reporting its own scandals in an open and transparent way, which I've got to say they've done brilliantly. And the importance of a free press. I salute The Sun for having brought the story to light in the first place. Their only great crime was reporting 2 parents and their concerns about their drug-addicted child, the alleged victim. A victim who, I should add, denies the story through expensively employed lawyers. Suggestions that the next Labour government will force newspapers to submit to a new government regulator is truly chilling, putting politicians in charge of what information we as a public have access to, effectively muzzling the press. Do you want MPs and cabinet ministers muzzling the press? Because I don't. The reporting of these allegations must continue apace, and any alleged wrongdoing must be brought to light. After all, Hugh deserved the truth. I really should be doing headlines for The Sun. Listen, what do you think? Mark at GBNews.com. Many would argue that it's time to move on from this story. There's nothing to see here. The law hasn't been broken. Get over it, Dolan. I've got a very good email of that flavour. How about this from John, who says, Mark, we want facts, not speculation and accusations on our watch. Wait for the facts on Hugh. He has the right of reply. Sorry to say you're being boring. Regular viewers for the moment, but not impressed. There you go. I've had a little bit of a slapped wrist from John. Well, this show is all about opinions. John, thank you for sharing yours. Keep them coming. Mark at gbnews.com. Is it time to move on from Hugh Edwards? Let's get the view of my top pundits to now. I'm delighted to welcome author and campaigner for children in care, Chris Wilde, GB News star Albiam Ancona, and journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. Chris Wilde, what do you think? Is it time to move on from Hugh Edwards? Because I haven't even started yet.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm done. I'm all Hugh'd out as well, I think. But you know what? I feel sorry for the family. I feel sorry for his kids. And what this shows is it's just the media bullying him. If he kills himself, everybody then will be coming out saying, oh, you know, we shouldn't have done that. Leave him alone, live and let live. Let his family get on with this now because they're going to go through a lot of trauma over the next few years. Move on. Bigger stories out there, Mark.
Albiam Ancona, is it time to move on from Hugh Edwards?
I don't think we will be moving on from Hugh Edwards because it's a huge story and it's a very interesting story. I just find it hilarious how everything sort of ends up on being either end of the culture war. You know, you're a North London woke lovey if you feel sorry for Hugh Edwards, and you're some right-wing lunatic if you think he was a bit of an idiot. I think we should probably look at it in a little bit more of a nuanced way. Obviously, he's not behaved in a proper way, but he's also in a very bad way in hospital. His family is suffering and also the victims are suffering. So maybe we just need to bring a bit more humanity into the conversation instead of trying to make everything so political.
Linda, you're one of the most experienced journalists in the country. You know a story when you see it. Does this still have legs?
Yes. So I think that it will carry on. It might tail off for a little bit, but I think it will surge back up again. Because let's face it, I mean, I'm not sure whether he's actually in a hospital or maybe some kind of rehab unit. So I don't know how long he's likely to be there for. But the minute he comes back out again, I think the story will surge back up again. And in many ways, it should. What I'd really like to know is, when all of this clinical depression was going on over a number of years, why didn't he seek help then? Why didn't he seek effective help at that point, instead of contacting young men, even if they're over 18? Why didn't he try harder to sort this out?
But do we know, Linda, that he didn't? And why would mental health issues cause you to procure, allegedly, pornographic pictures from a teenager?
I don't really understand that, but I do think there's at the back of mental health, I was told this years ago by one of the greatest addiction experts in this country.
OK.
When you've got perception and reality so far apart, there is nearly always a problem with some kind of addiction. You have to try and get the perception and reality matched up so they are nearly as one. And clearly, that's not the case with Hugh Edwards, which is probably at the heart of his behaviour. That's true.
OK.
But I think now he needs to take a look at this and he needs to start treating the issue seriously.
And
forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn.
No.
You know, I would hate him to be suicidal, but somehow he's got to get on top of this and actually, if only to support his wife and children.
OK, well, of course, the only thing we know he needs to get on top of is a mental health crisis. We have to say very clearly that all of the allegations are just that at the moment. We're going to return to this with the papers at 10:30. They've got some great headlines coming in. But next up, BBC legend from Children in Need, Crime Watch and many other TV hits, Sue Cook weighs in on this story. Sue Cook is next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's time now for the Newsmaker, in which we speak to a fearless commentator on the big issues of the day. And let's get more reaction now to the sex scandal engulfing the BBC and allegations against one of its biggest stars, Hugh Edwards. Tonight's Newsmaker is a truly legendary broadcaster, none other than the former presenter of BBC Children in Need, Crime Watch and many other TV hits, Sue Cook. Sue, welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Are you surprised by these allegations against Hugh Edwards?
Well, yes, everybody's surprised, aren't they? It was a terrible shock. You know, he's the guy who led us through. He announced the Queen's death. He led us through the Queen's funeral, and he's led us through the coronation. He's the trusted voice of the BBC. He was the equivalent of David Dimbleby, and of course we're all terribly shocked. But I think we have to rein it in a bit and chill, because we have no actual facts yet. These are allegations. The Sun put out these allegations. There's a very famous person. We can't tell you what his name is, but they're shocking allegations. And these are what happened. These are images, provocative images sent to a 17-year-old. Absolutely shocking. But we can't tell you who it is. It's like they pulled the pin out of the hand grenade, threw it over the wall, then ducked down behind the parapet, knowing there'd be a frenzy of curiosity. Within a few days, the word was going around who it was. But I think it's thoroughly disingenuous to make the allegations and not carry it through journalistically. We have no actual evidence, no facts, no bank statements, no papers, no letters, as far as I know. And then let everybody then completely explode in this terrible frenzy of stone throwing and agonies. And, what we need now is to be a bit calm down. Let's the BBC look at these allegations bit by bit. I think there's more to come out. There sounds as though there are more people coming out of the woodwork with stories. Let's have a look at these stories. Let's examine it properly in the cold light of day, and then find out what the truth of it is and decide what to do then. And you say, Hugh thinks this is going to go away. Well, I don't think he thinks anything at the moment. He's He's in hospital, having treatment for mental health issues, as we all know. And the whole thing is incredibly sad for everybody involved. And I don't think it's nice. It's nice to hear people getting so outraged and angry and speculative. Let's calm down.
Well, perhaps I'm guilty of that myself, Sue. No crime appears to have been committed. Does that kill the story?
Well, no, because if these allegations are true, then they do destroy the trust of somebody who was a very trusted broadcaster. Obviously, you can't have somebody in a public position if these allegations are true. We can probably sympathise with, perhaps in some way as to why they happened, but no, we can't really make any decisions. We can't decide what's going to happen until we actually know for sure what happened, to whom, and why, and and a forensic allegation and then investigation, and then we can sort things out from there.
Are you not surprised there hasn't been a denial from Hugh Edwards, or at least his representatives?
I would imagine there's legal advice going on, but he's not in a position, by the sound of it, to give any kind of statement at the moment. We've only had the statement from his wife. It's just terribly sad, isn't it? Because I happen to know that the newsroom at the BBC is absolutely devastated. They're all absolutely devastated about this. He was a nice person to work with. They all trusted him too. They are all in a state of shock. It's a very sad situation.
Do you recognise this kind of behaviour from your time at the BBC, leaving Hugh Edwards to one side?
Well, of course, there wasn't the social media situation when I was there, really. But no, it's not something I recognise, really. No, I mean, we all have our difficult situations from time to time in whatever the workplace is, I think. I don't think, actually, necessarily, we should hold the BBC entirely accountable for what its staff does. Any employer shouldn't have to be accountable for what its members of staff do in their private time. I think, you can get a little bit carried away with that, too.
And what about his future? If these allegations don't stand up and he's not found to have been a perpetrator of these alleged activities, does he get back on TV, do you think? What about his future?
Well, if they don't stand up, I suppose he ought to get back to his previous position. But I think, unfortunately, mud does stick, doesn't it? And I think it would be an object, really, to his trusted persona, really. I mean, maybe given time, if the allegations don't stand up, maybe given some time, then perhaps he could come back. Who knows? It all depends on what the outcome is of these allegations.
Indeed, innocent until proven guilty, and I take your point about everyone calming down and having a chill pill. It's a very fair point. Do you know Hugh Edwards personally?
No, I haven't ever met him. But I have I've always had huge respect for his style, his calm, measured forensic journalism. He was a wonderful broadcaster. It's very sad to lose him.
Well, Sue Cook, talking of wonderful broadcasters, it is the deepest privilege to have you on the show. I'm your #1 fan. And I've always enjoyed watching you on The Box. Thank you for your wise words of counsel there on, as you say, a very explosive and inflammatory story. And you're right to say, innocent till proven guilty, and let's get the facts. My thanks there to TV legend Sue Cook. Sue, we'll catch up again soon. Your reaction to that, do you think that Sue Cook is right, that we ought to step away from this story and let the facts emerge? We've been asking in our Twitter poll today, would you like to see Hugh Edwards back on The Box? I'll bring you the results of that very shortly. Plus the papers at 10:30 sharp with full pundit reaction. They'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros, and I've got no doubt there'll be some Hugh Edwards news as well. After all, it's the media bombshell story, perhaps not of the year, but certainly of the week. See you in 2.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite an unsettled, wet and miserable end to the week, and that isn't going to change much as we go through the weekend. It's all due to this area of low pressure that's going to be pushing northeastwards across the UK, and it's going to be bringing some pretty strong winds even as we go into tonight. But that rain that we've seen through much of Friday will start to clear away towards northern Scotland, but bringing some heavier bursts for eastern areas, so there could be some localised disruption there. Elsewhere, a drier night, maybe the odd shower, but with those strong winds, temperatures still remaining in the low teens. Now looking to the start of the weekend, and that rain will start to clear away from northern Scotland. A rash of showers developing across the rest of the UK. These could be heavy and thundery, and with some particularly strong winds as well. They'll be rattling from west to east throughout the day, though we might just see the odd more slow-moving shower across parts of Scotland. But in those strong winds, it's going to continue to be feeling unseasonably cool through Saturday. Looking ahead to Sunday, though, generally the better day of the weekend for many. There will be some persistent rain for a time across western parts of Scotland and the odd shower elsewhere, but a bit more in the way of sunshine and winds starting to ease as we go south to north. But looking ahead into the new week, and it will still remain unsettled, not so much as we've seen over the weekend, with temperatures at or below average.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Papers in just a second, but the results are in, folks. We've been conducting an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, would you like to see Hugh Edwards back on TV? and a humble 29.7% say yes, whilst 70.3% say no. Well, it's exactly 10:30. It's time for this. Yes, indeed, hot off the press at 10:30 every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It's the papers on Mark Dolan. Tonight we start with the Times, and they lead with inheritance tax could be axed in Tory bid for votes. Downing Street is holding talks about scrapping inheritance tax as part of a totemic offering to voters before the next election. The Times has been told there's a live discussion among senior figures in Number 10 about abolishing the levy as the Tory party's headline tax offer next year. It's been widely assumed that the Tories would opt to cut income tax by as much as 2p, which would cost around £13 billion a year. However, there are concerns that any savings will be dwarfed by the impact of mortgage rate rises and inflation. Inheritance tax would be cheaper to cut at a cost to the Treasury about £7 billion a year. Supporters argue it would be a game changer in the blue wall seats in the south of England that the Tories are defending. So what do we think? We'll discuss that with my pundits very shortly. Mirror next. Linda Nolan, wonderful singer, of course, broadcaster, one of the Nolan sisters. I lie in my room and wonder if I'll be here in a month. A shocking battle against cancer, and we wish her well. What an amazing lady. Also, very much mirroring our Mark Dolan Tonight People's poll, we want Hugh back on TV. Telly pals rally for stricken star as poll shows viewers support his return. Telegraph, schools told to aid parents of trans pupils. Schools will be told to help parents protect their children in new government guidance on trans issues to be published next week. Downing Street is set to issue the advice to schools to provide clarity on how they should respond to the growing number of children who say they are transgender. Pay wealthy tourists to spend cash in London, Burberry tells government. Burberry is in talks with ministers to find a way of luring wealthy overseas shoppers back to London as visitors abandon the capital because of Rishi Sunak's tourist tax. Daily Express now. Exposed eco plot to paralyse the capital. Daily Mail, meltdown, holiday crisis as strike threatens to cripple Gatwick. Second walkout could hit 1 in 3 flights across Europe. And if you do get there, it'll be 45 degrees centigrade. Independence. Repay the debt of honour to Afghans who fought with us. Those are your front pages. We'll get more as they come. Meskana and Abigail are busy printing out the front pages as they do every weekend. Got the dream team tonight. Marky's directing. Lovely Alistair, of course, as well, in charge of the technicals. Listen, let's get reaction now from my top pundits tonight. I'm delighted to have the campaigner and author Chris Wilde, GB News star, and I use that word advisedly, Albiam Ancona, and journalist and broadcaster, Queen of the Scoop, Linda Jubilee. Well, listen, lots of stories to get through. Can we dive into inheritance tax, Albie?
Yeah, definitely.
Is this a vote winner for the Tories to cut it, to get rid of it?
I think it could potentially be a vote winner, but we already heard, I think, earlier on this week that Jeremy Hunt was ruling out tax cuts before the next general election. So I think the idea that all of a sudden, 48 hours later, he's decided, actually, we're going to scrap inheritance tax seems to be maybe for the birds. And I think more broadly, when I see these maybe last-ditch ideas that the Conservatives are coming up with to win the next general election, I just think, well, you've had 13 years to do what you wanted. Why haven't you done any of the stuff that you've wanted to do? If you wanted to cut inheritance tax, why not do that in 2015? Why not do it in 2013? Why not do it in 2017? I just think coming up with all of these plans at this point, when we're a year, 18 months away from a general election, probably isn't going to cut the mustard when it comes to people voting for the Conservatives in the next election.
I do agree. I think, Linda, the Tories represent 13 years of what if. This is potentially what they call flying a kite, isn't it? Sort of plant a story in the papers, see how it goes down?
I think it reeks of desperation as well. I mean, it could be that they actually do think this is something that might work out before the next election. But the fact of the matter is it won't work. There isn't very much that will work. The issue for Rishi Sunak is that there is not enough time left to achieve what he wants to achieve in the 5 pillars he has outlined. I just don't think there's enough time before the election, which I think will probably be in October of next year. It's just impossible to do it. So I don't know why this story is being spun around. It's just been, you're right, flying a kite. Run it up the flagpole and see who salutes.
Is there any chance the Tories could go to the wire and have a January election in 2025?
I don't think that's possible, is it?
It is, yeah.
It is possible.
It's the very last moment they can do it.
I think so.
Which is what I would call... It's a political equivalent of Fergie time.
So I think it is possible. Do you think, if you think
You're not
about
football
it,
fans, I can tell that.
No, I thought you were talking about the singer from the Black Eyed Peas.
Prince Andrew's wife. Correct. Duchess of York. Yeah, that's what I thought. No. Sir Alex.
Different generations. But no,
Not all of my jokes land, I can't lie.
that was a funny one, Mark. So it landed with me at least anyway. But I do think it could go to the wire until 2025. Whereas if Rishi Sunak kind of gets to a position where he's thinking, well, I'm going to lose the next general election anyway, he's going to think, well, I just going to be Prime Minister for as long as possible, just as an individual, as a person. What would you do in that situation? You know you're going to lose the election. Well, I quite like this job. I'll just do it as long as possible.
Some of those figures, though, some of those economic figures, you give them an extra 4 or 5 months and they fluctuate slightly. I mean, that could work. I think that he wants as long as possible.
But if we remember what happened with Major in the 1990s, in the lead-up to 1997, the economy was actually doing very well. Major did not get rewarded for that in the 1990s, 1997 general election. He got punished for it. So I think even if he does stop the boats, even if he does cut debt, even if he does get waiting lists down, grow the economy, and inflation is halved in some miracle, will he actually get rewarded for that at the next general election?
Well, why do you think he wouldn't?
Because if we look at what history tells us, with Major in the 1990s, the economy was doing very well.
With Kenneth Clarke as Chancellor.
Amazing work in the Treasury. I wish he was the Prime Minister, but I'll just leave my love for
He's one of the great Prime Ministers we never had.
He is, you know, he's like King Tory Wet, and I'm a proud Tory Wet, and Ken Clarke is my man. But the point is that Ken Clarke and Sir John Major were not rewarded in the 1997 election for actually doing really good things with the economy.
And Labour's economic miracle in 1997 was off the back of that great groundwork. Chris Wilde, do you think that inheritance tax is regressive? People are effectively taxed twice, aren't they?
Yeah, and, you know, I'm kind of new to politics. I'm just getting into it, like, the last 12 months. And I don't really know too much about it, but it seems to me there's a bit of an Armageddon going on and the Tories pull out stuff like this. For me, you know, I don't know too much about it to comment on it as such, Mark.
Well, it's just the idea, isn't it, that let's say you buy a house and then you spend your life sort of working hard, you pay off the mortgage, and when it goes to your kids, 40% of the value of that property goes to tax. And now the Tories' idea, it would cost about $7 billion a year. The kids get it for nothing.
But Mark, can I just come back to you on this? Because I was interested in what you just said previously about you actually... You don't want the tax to be stopped, and
yeah, I'm not convinced that it should be scrapped. I'd rather see tax cuts for hard-working
But why
Brits.
though? May I ask why? Because I didn't really understand.
Well, I think you've got a certain. I mean, if you're going to do tax cuts, if there's a pot of cash for tax cuts, I'd rather see it just go to reduce the amount of tax people pay on their income.
Right.
And that would be my viewers and listeners who put in a hard shift every week, trying to make ends meet. And I think that's how I would do it. Whereas I think cutting inheritance tax only benefits people with significant assets, and I think that would be nice further down the line, but not now.
It benefits the rich, doesn't it, basically? It benefits the rich more than the working class.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue that. The only thing proviso to that is that plenty of my viewers will be in homes worth a certain amount, and I'll say, look, I'm not rich. It's just the housing market is such.
Geographically, in London, your house is going to be worth $500,000. In the north,
this is it. But they would argue it doesn't make them rich as such. But what do you think? I mean, would you scrap inheritance tax altogether?
Of course, yeah. I'm lucky. I own my house in London, and I would like to think when I die, my children get that money. They can go...
So you're not comfortable with the government taking a 40% share?
Absolutely not, no. I'm not.
Does that fly in the face of your left-leaning principles?
Well, no, I don't think it is. I'm still entitled to my opinion. I don't have to follow every Labour policy out there and agree with it, because I don't. You know, I like some of, you know, the Conservative policies. Yeah. You know, the reason I support
You're a free
Labour,
thinker.
Yeah, and the reason I'm a Labour supporter is because I'm a hard-class, working-class boy from Yorkshire. Yeah. And I believe in Labour, you know, policies as such, very much old-school policies where, you know, we all deserve the chance to live a good life, and that's what I believe in.
Well, I think it's interesting what Chris has said there, because that was the essence of New Labour, wasn't it? It was very aspirational. Peter Mandelson said, I'm very relaxed about people becoming rich. And it was Tony Blair who kept the top rate of tax at 40%.
Yeah, I think that's why New Labour got in, because it was so appealing. Everyone wanted a new guy in the hot seat. You know, they wanted change. It wasn't really to do with the Conservatives losing. It was to do with a new party coming in with a politician who had some charisma, who was accessible to most people. What's interesting, though, is that you think about cutting taxes, and I saw a figure the other week, 21.7% of the people in this country are economically inactive. That means roughly 3/4 of the people in this country are earning the tax that goes into the exchequer. Now, you simply can't keep cutting taxes all the time and still preserve services, important services for people. It's impossible.
Indeed so. And can we go to the Daily Mail now, Linda? Meltdown. Holiday crisis as strike threatens to cripple Gatwick. Second walkout could hit 1 in 3 flights across Europe. And when you get there, it'll be 45 degrees centigrade.
Wow.
Is it time to go to Skegness? Which, by the way, I've been to, and can I tell you, it's a rocking town.
I think Blackpool rather than Skegness.
Yeah, maybe.
Blackpool's good.
Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the Pepsi Max is a wonderful roller coaster.
Yeah. Is that? I thought it was a drink. Who knew?
Well, no, they've got a Pepsi Max roller coaster. They've got an Iron Brew roller coaster. They're all sponsored, of course, but Blackpool is where I used to go every summer with my grandma.
That's so sweet. But I don't know why people are complaining about it being hot in Europe. What's the problem with that? I mean, get some sunscreen out, get a little fan going.
You know, 45 degrees is a lot.
Yes. And, you know, it's the first time this year, we normally go to Cyprus every year. My wife's from Cyprus. It's the first time in the last 12 years I'm staying in England. I'm going to Primrose Valley for my holiday.
Right.
And for that reason, I have a 2-year-old son. I can't expose him to that kind of...
So have you heard about the temperatures in Cyprus?
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, well, they're going to go up to 40, 41, 42, 43, and that's Australia heat.
Yeah, see, I was a foreign correspondent in the Far East, so I think it's manageable, and I'd rather have sunshine than tipping rain all the time.
Well, Primrose Valley is very nice. I don't know if you've been
Where
there.
is that, then? Tell me.
It's on the coast, the north coast up by Great Yarmouth.
Oh.
It's, yeah. It's safe, it's safe.
Daily Mirror. Dare I mention his name? We want Hugh back on TV. Albie, there is a kind of divide here about Hugh Edwards. First of all, we've got allegations unsubstantiated at the moment. You know, he'll come out, he'll defend himself, innocent until proven guilty. But the country feels split on the coverage of this story and whether or not he should return to TV.
I don't know if the split is as big as we think it is, and I don't know if it's really seen as a split. Most people I talk to do feel very sorry for the man. I think most people I talk to also say, yes, it's wrong to have an affair. It's a bit weird to spend 35 grand buying porn from, you know, a younger man if you're a married man in a relationship, a heterosexual relationship with a woman. I think all people think it's both a tragic and a very strange situation, but ultimately... I just think let's just let the due process take course.
By the way, when I want to come to you, I must stress, by the way, that we do not know the gender of any of the victims. No, yeah. And of course, there are allegations. Linda, what
but
you
I
say?
think the issue here is, well, there are several issues, but one of them is that we're not talking about a presenter like Philip Schofield, who was largely an entertainment features sort of presenter. We're talking about a news presenter, the top news presenter. And in a way, they do have to be like Caesar's wife, beyond reproach, because you're presenting the news.
Should anyone be beyond reproach?
Well, I'm really sorry, but I think the really best news presenters need to maintain some sort of position, because it's such an important job.
We live in a country which elected Boris Johnson to be the Prime Minister, serial adulterer.
Yeah.
We live in a country where our king and queen were in a relationship, an extramarital relationship, when they were both married to other people. I just think this whole idea that it's this kind of almost Victorian moral outrage and
that's
affair
exactly my
is a
point.
bit over the top.
When it's the news and you're delivering the news, you have to be in a really cool, level, impartial position.
But I think you have to for the BBC, for Channel 4.
Well, he is on the BBC.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The BBC have got this kind of this screen test before you go into those very, very prominent positions. Of course, they've known about this man for the past 30, 40 years. Well, we've just had a we've had a discussion. Well, we've just had a discussion.
What do you mean known about this man?
No, but I'm just saying, you don't just wake up one day, as we discussed earlier, and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. He's been doing this for a long time. Surely they've known about it.
We don't know that he's...
No, I'm not, Mark. I'm not saying he has, but I'm just saying, you don't just
I don't
wake
want you
up...
to lose that house of yours.
No. I don't want to get sued. I don't want to get sued. But I'm just saying, is like we wake up like it's a revolution, like this has just happened. He's been, if he's, anyway, I'll be quiet because I'll go into the legalities here. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, Chris is very clear there that, of course, these are allegations about Hugh Edwards. I loved having Sue Cook on earlier, and she said, look, everybody, take a chill pill. Wait for the facts, let Hugh defend himself, and of course we will do that. What I won't do, by the way, what I won't do is say that the story is over and there's nothing to see here. Not on my watch. It's called journalism, folks. Who knew? Next up, my pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and backpage baddies, and we've got more papers. See you in 2.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, more front pages coming in thick and fast. The Guardian, let's have a look at what they are splashing with. Surge in demand for UK gaming addiction clinic. And also universities PM to limit number of low-value degrees. And the good old Guardian featuring 20 dog-friendly stays if you decide to go on holiday and take your mutt with you. OK, now let's have a look at the Star, who are always reliable when it comes to a bit of fun and levity, which we do need. Blowtorch Brits. Brits risk getting burned to a crisp as they cram the beaches of Europe, defying warnings that temperatures could hit 49 degrees. Don't forget that sunblock. OK, let's get reaction now to all the stories and nominations of Greatest Britons and Union Jackasses from my fantastic pundits. Of course, it's going to be interesting who they choose. Author and campaigner Chris Wilde, GB News star Albion Ancona, and journalist and broadcaster and podcaster Linda Jubilee, the Commons Sense podcast, which is a brilliant listen, let me tell you.
Thank you very much.
You and Sven, #Dream Team. Look, we've got to power through these because so many big stories to get through. Just a quick word on universities. PM to limit number of low-value degrees. Hallelujah, Albie.
No, it's not hallelujah, because if we think about where a lot of these low-value degrees are being taken, it is often at universities which would have been ex-polytechnics, which often tend to be in left-behind towns. And actually, these universities bring a huge economic boost to a lot of these places like Huddersfield, Bradford, for example. So I think we've got to be quite careful when it comes to both limiting international students who go to the universities and trying to degenerate the ideas of people going to get a media studies degree from Bradford, if that's what someone wants to do.
OK, fair play.
Do.
Fair play. Chris Wilde, could you nominate your headline hero of the day? Who's caught your eye? Who's smiling upon you today?
Yes, sir, I can, and I will say it with glee, is Angela Rayner is my hero.
OK.
And for reasons being, I just
don't think anyone's ever said that sentence.
Yeah, but you know what? She really flies the flag for working class people, and I love her for that. She's always under pressure by all these Tories who've gone to private schools, who've gone to university. She stands her ground. She didn't go to university. She left school with no qualifications, and she's living proof. But you can work hard and be successful.
She'd be a much better Labour Party leader than Keir Starmer, don't you think?
Absolutely.
She's a much better performer than Starmer, isn't she? I mean, I know she rubs people up the wrong way, Linda, but she makes the headline.
My kids love her, though. Yeah. Absolutely love her. I think she's really popular with young people.
She is. She reaches out to modern youth, and that's what's important. And she will get the votes.
I think what upsets people is, Tories are scum, that kind of language. I'm sure you wouldn't support that.
I don't. Yeah.
But maybe she'll learn on the job. But she's certainly talented. She's certainly got something about her. So I think it's a fair comment. Albie, briefly, if you can, your headline hero.
My headline hero is Vicky Flint, otherwise known as Hugh Edwards' wife. I think she has behaved amazingly this week, and it's probably been one of the most difficult weeks of her life. And I just sincerely hope that family finds the resolution that they need as soon as possible.
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
Linda, who's your headline hero?
Well, I think it's Tom Somerset Howe, who was the survivor of a brutal period of treatment from his wife, who was actually having an affair with his carer. And he survived all of this. He has cerebral palsy. I listened to an interview with him tonight on television where he said, I haven't been able to work and I don't work, but I regard this now as work. I will campaign to make sure that no one else ever suffers the way I've suffered. The description at the time was he was treated like a dog. He wasn't fed, he wasn't cleaned, he was left in a room, imprisoned in his own home. And I think to come back with that kind of really humane remark is an extraordinary thing.
Absolutely, and brilliant nomination. I loved all three of those, I've got to say. Back page zeros, clock's against us, folks. Can we power through these? Chris Wilde, who's raised your ire tonight?
Just quickly, Mike, it's Captain Tom's daughter, and just how she's kind of just defamed her dad's name. It's horrible, it's repugnant, and it's upsetting. It's really horrible to read that.
There's a question mark about sort of misappropriation of funds.
Yes, yeah, and just having an opulent lifestyle on her dad's good work. It's not.
I mean, has she defended that? Is there any counter-argument to that? Has she said this isn't true? She denied it?
Yeah, she has denied it.
Has she? I've not seen any reports of it, but if you say it's happened, then...
When she was originally accused of taking twice the salary she should have taken, she adjusted it. She didn't deny it, but she adjusted the salary. And I think they've they did quite at that point they did quite a good PR job. But actually, the situation is, as I would say, bleeding out. I don't think they can control it.
No.
OK, all right. Well, she's not here to defend herself. I'm sure she would deny the allegations. Albie and Linda, you're going to share this one because Albie, who's your back page zero?
My back page zero is everyone that's judging Hugh Edwards. We live in a country where half the adult population consume porn during lockdown. 30 to 40% of unmarried people have affairs and 20% of married people have affairs.
Meanwhile, you are judging.
Meanwhile,
you're one of those people.
I am so
You've
sorry.
never watched porn before.
No, I'm not particularly a judgmental person, but at the end of the day, at the end of the day, he could have acted with a little bit more self-discipline, and no one would be in the mess they're in now.
OK. Well, listen, there you go. That's a brilliant set of nominations. Let me tell you why I don't watch porn. Why would you when there's songs of praise? Ask the summer why. I like Nora Batty. That does it for me.
Oh, no.
Thanks to my brilliant team, my amazing pundits. We're back tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
Brilliant.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite an unsettled, wet and miserable end to the week, and that isn't going to change much as we go through the weekend. It's all due to this area of low pressure that's going to be pushing northeastwards across the UK, and it's going to be bringing some pretty strong winds even as we go into tonight. But that rain that we've seen through much of Friday will start to clear away towards northern Scotland, but bringing some heavier bursts for eastern areas, so there could be some localised disruption there. Elsewhere, a drier night, maybe the odd shower, but with those strong winds, temperatures still remaining in the low teens. Now looking to the start of the weekend, and that rain will start to clear away from northern Scotland. A rash of showers developing across the rest of the UK. These could be heavy and thundery, and with some particularly strong winds as well. They'll be rattling from west to east throughout the day, though we might just see the odd more slow-moving shower across parts of Scotland. But in those strong winds, it's going to continue to be feeling unseasonably cool through Saturday. Looking ahead to